So thank you all for joining us today. I've worked with many of you over the last few years on your CCA data collection, and I am also joined today with Mike Baumgartner, who is from Complete College America. And the two of us will be doing the large majority of the presentation today. Mike will be talking to you about the common completion metrics and what states are doing with those metrics, and the overall work of Complete College America. And then I'll be going into depth and doing a demo on the CCA data collection system. If you've been with us in past years, chances are it's not going to look new. We've tried to keep the system as stable as possible from one year to the next and only include enhancements that make your life easier. And there are a few slight changes to the metrics, but nothing like what you may have seen in prior years. I also, before we get started, I do want to introduce two other important people that we have on the telephone. And I'll let them, if they want to, they can unmute and say hello. First is Angela Sanchez, and many of you have probably chatted with Angela. Go ahead, Angela.
Hi, sorry.
So Angela, many of you have probably chatted with her. She's our first point of contact here at SHEEO, and she is the first person you will talk to most likely if you have any challenges. She'll make sure that you get to the right person. The second person I want to introduce is John Armstrong. John, you want to say hello?
Hi everybody, this is John. I'm very much looking forward to assisting with this project, and I look forward to working with all of you on the data collection.
So John is very new to SHEEO, but he comes to us from our Minnesota SHEEO office, and he will be working very closely with me on the data collection, helping address all the questions that you have with metrics, and just helping make this a seamless process for you. And then finally, many of you have spoken with Chris Ott before, and he will continue to be our technical go-to person for this process. So I've kind of already reviewed the content of the webinar. This just provides you a general overview of what are the topics that we hope to cover today. And now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Mike from Complete College America and let him talk about the work that they're doing.
Thanks, Katie. Welcome, everyone. I'm not the main event here. Katie's the main event, but I do want to give those of you who don't know anything about CCA or know very little a quick overview of CCA and the metrics and what states and campuses are doing with them, so you'll understand the value of this process. We are an organization that is now 5 years old, and we have 35 members in our Alliance of States. That includes the District of Columbia and most recently the Northern Mariana Islands. So we are actually beyond states now into other entities. But we work with this Alliance of States in a number of activities. Katie, can you go to the next slide, please? And those activities revolve around using the common completion metrics. The common completion metrics were developed back in 2009 and 2010 with the National Governors Association and with Complete College America and a number of organizations who work on this. And the idea was to get together some metrics that would really help us map out strategies to get students to completion both at a state policy level and at the campus level in ways that, of course, the iPads collections can't do. And we want to inform policymakers and the general public. We want to help with the analysis. We want policymakers and institutions to understand what challenges they have and what options there are to overcome those. We want to be able to show progress over time. We're in this for the long haul and to make completion a reality for many more students, and as an accountability measure as well. So we're kind of born out of a couple of initiatives. As I mentioned, the National Governors Association, Complete to Compete, adopted the same metrics, and then we have carried out the collection in our partnership with SHEEO over the past 3 years. Next slide, Katie. So what do we do with them? Well, they inform the policies that we work with our states to implement. For instance, performance funding, the co-requisite remediation model, our work on 15 to finish that came out of the University of Hawaii, the structured schedules that have done so much for Tennessee institutions in particular, but also CUNY and starting with the Ivy Tech system in Indiana, and our kind of umbrella policy, the guided pathways to success. The various metrics all play into that, understanding what are students doing, how long is it taking them, where are they falling off track, how are they getting through the remediation sequence, what are their retention rates, and through a number of disaggregations that help us understand subpopulations. Next slide, Katie. So we have two kinds of metrics, well really three, but context only includes two metrics. We have the outcome metrics and we have progress metrics. As I mentioned, we did this to supplement what's in IPEDS because IPEDS is, as you know, if you're on this call, you're probably very familiar that it really covers first-time, full-time students, not everyone else, and it doesn't include a lot of measures that show students going through the pipeline. So we do have the degrees awarded annually, graduation rates and transfer rates that IPEDS has, but we also have credits and time to degree, things that IPEDS does not have. Next slide. As far as progress metrics go, we really get into the student pipeline and look at remediation, entry, and success, the students who enter remediation, or English, reading, or math, and the students who complete the sequence and then go on to the gateway course. We look at success in first-year college courses. We look at credit accumulation, how many hours are students accumulating in their first year. We look at course completion, what percentage of courses are being completed, and we look at retention rates. And again, the only one of those metrics that's in IPEDS is the retention rates. Next slide, Katie. And we disaggregate in ways that IPEDS doesn't do. For instance, we have Pell Grant recipients. We look at age groups. We have full-time, part-time transfer. For one of the metrics, we have discipline and degree type. And then we have remedial status. And even looking at what IPEDS is going toward with the outcome measures, they're not going to disaggregate that by these categories. So once they do their outcome measures in 6 and 8 years, which is a big improvement to the graduation rate survey that they have now, we still won't know how we're attacking achievement gaps with that measure. We've got to do the disaggregations, and we think that's a very important part of the Common College Completion Metrics. Next slide. So in 2013, 29 of our states submitted state-level metrics, and 18 states submitted campus-level metrics. Next slide. And for those of you who put them together in particular, I'm sure you asked yourselves why. Well, what's being done with them? Well, we use them for a lot of different things. For instance, 27 states have come to completion academies where we bring teams of state policymakers and campus leaders together to draw out statewide completion plans. That starts with a review of the statewide metrics to understand what's actually going on at a state level and start the planning from that process. We've had 5 states use campus-level completion metrics as they prepare for in-state completion academies. Those are teams of campus leaders, faculty members, student services, finance, presidents, provosts, who come together and they look at the campus-level metrics. Now, I know that they also have their own IR shops. They look at a number of different things, but it's always interesting to see that they're not always looking at the same metrics, and this sometimes opens up really new ways to think about what's going on at the campus and new strategies they need to employ for that. We have 5 states with 20 campuses that are part of a grant funded by the Helmsley Charitable Trust, which uses our guided pathways to success strategies to improve the outcomes of STEM students. For that project, we've actually delved down into the program level, into the STEM programs, because in order to understand what the STEM pipeline is, you've got to take a look at what's happening to those students. And of course, at the state level and campus levels, we couldn't get down to that level, so that's even more granular. But we're not asking states to do that, so you can breathe a sigh of relief if you're not part of that program. Maryland and Indiana have used the information that's provided by the completion metrics to pass some really large policy changes through legislation on college preparation and college success. That came in large part from looking at their credits and time to degree and their remediation policies, and looking at strategies that would attack those directly. So have had considerable impact in some states in legislation. Next slide, please, Katie. A number of states have implemented performance funding from CCA Alliance and non-Alliance states as well, but in 2 cases, Illinois and Oklahoma, they've integrated the CCA metrics directly into the performance funding formulas. Hawaii's 15 to Finish initiative, which they have graciously allowed states to roll out nationwide, came from, in part, looking at their own time to completion and credit accumulation metrics whenever they went through a state academy. West Virginia is using the metrics to talk with community college leaders in particular about remediation needs and the remediation successes of their students and looking at new models. And finally, last year we had an opportunity to work with the St. Louis Regional Chamber, which thanks to the good work of the Missouri Department of Higher Education and the campuses in Missouri that participated from the St. Louis region and the Illinois Board of Higher Education and the Illinois Community College Board, we were able to put together for them metrics that help them develop their plan to get into the top 20 in educational attainment by metropolitan areas in the next year. So lots of different ways these metrics are being used, and again, they're integral to our work and integral to understanding completion nationwide. I think that's my last slide, Katie. So
it is. Thank you so much, Mike. So now the first thing I want to talk about in terms of logistics for the 2014 data collection process is the timeline. So many of you know that the CCA data collection opened on March 15th, 2014, and our system is fully open for you to access resources and be able to upload your files. The target date for CCA submission is May 15th, 2014. This year we have decided to produce some reports a little bit earlier on, ideally as an incentive for our states to get their data in as close to the deadline as possible. So we plan on doing a preliminary database lock on June 30th, 2014, which will allow us to produce reports that we plan to distribute to both key holders and state liaisons for them to review. And these are the same data books that are passed out every year at the CCA convening. And what this will allow is for states to review their data and the way it's going to look in those data books, so that if they see any changes that need to be made, they can make those. And additionally, for states to recognize whether or not they've actually completed their common completion metrics, and hopefully provide some incentive to get those done quicker. States will then have approximately a month to make any changes, and then we'll do the final database lock on August 30th. So that's the overall timeline. Throughout the 3 years that we've been managing this process, really what we request is for states to let us know what their timeline is and what is going to work for them. We understand that not every state will make the May 15th deadline, but by you helping us understand what a reasonable deadline for your state is, that allows us to ensure that we get quality data that can be reviewed and distributed in a timely fashion. So please continue to communicate with SHEEO and let us know where you are in the process. The next thing I want to do is provide an overview of the roles. So if you are a veteran CCA data submitter, then you probably are very familiar with these roles. But if you are new to the process, then these roles may be good or may be new to you, and they might provide some context for how we work the data collection oversight. So each state has a state agency key holder, and this key holder's responsibility is to coordinate all the data submission and ensure that the data that is submitted is of the highest level of quality, and these folks will communicate with the institutions. We know that in many cases they the state level key holder will want to designate some of their roles to another person in that state or at an institution. And so they can designate key holders. By designating key holders, they're allowing that other person to do some data, to do the data approval. They can add operators, and operators cannot approve data, but they can submit data. They can upload and view data. So really the state key holder is the person that SHEEO works with directly at the state level. Designated key holders are people who are helping the key holder out. They are performing key holder functions, but they are not necessarily SHEEO's primary contact at the state level. And then operators just have the ability to upload and view the data. We find that in most states, our institutional folks are the operators, and the data approval is done at the state level. But there are some states where that's an exception, and the state will designate an institutional level key holder. So that's kind of the different levels of permission that you might have. So if you see a button that says data approval and it isn't functional, then one of the reasons for that could be that you are designated an operator. We do ask that all requests for changes in status go through the state level key holder, and the state level key holder does have the ability to add institutions and also to add individuals into their group of key holders and operators. So that's a little bit of an overview of the different roles that you may have. Now I want to give you a brief overview of the system, just a high level, and then what we're going to do is in a few moments we'll actually look at the system, and so this will probably be more concrete once you see the system. Our system provides two ways for you to upload data. First, you can upload data using a flat file specification, so you can code the data using whatever technology that you have or whatever databases that you have. You can produce a flat file, and we provide you with the specifications for what that flat file looks like. And then you can upload and validate that data through the website in one step. The other option is you can use an Excel workbook. And this Excel workbook actually, it allows you to input data into Excel, so it's very user-friendly for those of us who work a lot in Excel and are maybe not as comfortable with flat files. And then what this Excel workbook will do is it will produce a flat file in the proper specifications, and then you would go through the same process as somebody who is submitting a flat file, and you would actually upload that flat file, which then gets validated in a single step, and then everybody reviews and approves the data. Once the data is reviewed and approved, it will be moved from the data collection database to our reporting database. So we don't report on any data that has not been approved. So that gives you kind of an overview, and like I said, we'll look at the system so that you can see it in action. But before we do that, what I do want to do is provide you with an overview of the changes that we have for the 2014 data collection. And as I said before, we really tried to keep these changes to the minimum so that it didn't add too much additional reporting burden to each individual. So the first major change that you'll see in the system in relationship to the actual metrics is that this year we will be collecting the 200% completion data for the 2005 bachelor's cohort that you reported for last year. So because last year we skipped forward 2 years, Most states who reported May 15th did not have 200% completion data for the 2005 fall bachelor's cohort, and that's why we're asking you to report that data this year. You will still report the on-time and the 150% completion data for your bachelor's cohort for fall 2006 as well. So, and then next year, you'll report the 200% graduation rate for that cohort. And you'll see that there's a separate screen where you actually view those 200% completion rates. This is not unlike what IPEDS does through their 200% completion rate survey. The next change that you will see is that for outcome metric 4, which is average time and credits to degree, we are asking you to report an average time and credits to degree for one additional breakout, and that is for students who did not enroll in remedial education courses. We still also want you to report for students who did enroll in remedial education courses. The reason for this is that for all of our other metrics, we can calculate a number for the total number of students who did not participate in remedial education using some simple addition and subtraction. However, because credits and time to degree, we ask you to report an average, we can't calculate this number on our side. So we have no way of understanding how remedial students are performing in relationship to all other students. And so that's why we have asked you to report this additional breakout. Finally, CCA is collecting data for the number of full-time students completing 30 or more semester hours and part-time students completing 50 or more semester hours in progress metric 4. So if you remember progress metric 4, we already collect the total number of full-time students who are completing 24 or more semester hours and part-time students who complete 12 or more semester hours. But as many of you know through the Complete to Compete initiative and through the strategy of encouraging students to enroll in 15 credit hours as full-time, CCA really would like to have a count of how many students are enrolling at that higher credit hour level, and our current metrics don't allow them to do that. So this addition will allow them to track how many students are enrolling at those higher levels, credit hour levels. So those are the key changes that you will see to the metrics and variables. It added very few variables, different from what you might have seen in previous years. In terms of other changes that were made to the metrics technical guide, we made a number of clarifications. Most of these were designed to help ensure that our cohorts and our population definitions are consistent throughout and very clear. We get lots of questions around how to define cohorts, and so we're just trying to be vigilant and more clear around so that we get more consistency in the data. And then finally, there are a few system changes that we made. And again, we made all of these system changes ideally to help make your job easier when you're uploading the data. So the first thing that you'll see in our system is that we have improved the upload communication. So in the past, when you uploaded a file, you saw a pop-up box that sometimes never disappeared, even though your data had uploaded. This year, what we have done is we've enhanced that process by showing you a progress bar that shows how far along you are in your upload process. And we hope that this makes the upload process easier for everybody and more clear. The second thing that we've done is we get a lot of questions around errors and how to understand your error summary. So we've added some language and clarity to the error summary screen. Next, in the past, we've had a number of people who have struggled with uploading data files that maybe had extra decimal or extra places after the decimal point, and the system didn't accept those data formats. And we've made our system so that it is a little bit more, so it allows more data formats to be uploaded. So we think that that will make it easier for some states who had challenges with that. The next thing that we've done is we've added some additional functions to our data management and approval options just to respond to your needs and make your lives easier. I think most notable is that we have made it possible for our state-level key holders to approve all of this data for all of their institutions at once. And I want to caution everybody that we've provided the key holders with a lot of flexibility in being able to approve their data. This doesn't mean that we don't want you reviewing your data. So we still want to ensure that key holders are reviewing at least a certain percentage, ideally 10% of all of your data, and ensuring that there really is accuracy in the data before you do a bulk approval. Ultimately, you are responsible for the quality of that data. So we've heard that our previous processes made your lives more difficult. A lot of those previous processes were designed to encourage you to be paying close attention to your data. So we're really trying to strike a balance here. But I just want to encourage you that if you're going to do bulk approvals, that you make sure that you do a certain amount of oversight before you do that. And then finally, we added some additional filters to the system that will ideally just make it easier to navigate. So now that I've kind of explained these to you without context, I want to go ahead and show you the CCA data collection system and just walk you through a couple of different things. So just one moment while I share my desktop. Okay. So the first thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is I am going to log in as a key holder. And each of you should have your login information. It's the same login information that you used last year. If you're having any problems logging in, you can always contact the CCA customer service line, and Angela can help get you set up with a new password or just make sure that your account is fully functional. If you're new to CCA and you do not have a login yet, if you're a key holder, you'll need to contact, or if you're a state key holder, you'll need to contact us at CCA directly. If you are an operator or a new institutional key holder, then you'll want to contact your state key holder and they can get you set up in the system. So I'm going to go ahead and log in, and you'll see that the first thing that you see is your home page. This is your one-stop shop. You actually don't have to log in to be able to view the home page. So this is kind of your one-stop shop for everything. You'll see they have the metrics technical guide. This is what tells you what should be included in your metrics. The user guide provides an understanding of how to use the CCA data collection system. The 2014 changes details the changes that I just reviewed. The flat file specifications provides you with an understanding of how to produce a flat file, and then the table of variable names is also an essential component of those flat file specifications. There's the Excel data preparation workbook if you're choosing to use that instead of the flat file specifications to produce your file. Or alternatively, the Excel data preparation workbook can retrieve data from the database directly and put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and that can sometimes be very helpful for the work that you're doing at state. We also have, new this year, we have a list of the error codes and descriptions. We're trying to provide a little bit better context around the errors that the system generates. And then finally, we've got frequently asked questions that we'll continue to update as that becomes necessary. There's also all your resources for prior years. So if you do need to make changes to prior years, you will need to use the flat file specifications or the data preparation workbooks for those years. One thing I do want to mention is that if you need to make changes to your 2005 bachelor's graduation rate, either on time or 150%, you do need to submit that data under 2013. That data can't be submitted in 2014. We only accept the 200% graduation rate or graduation counts in the 2014 system. And I'll show you, you'll see that the system handles multiple collection years at once. So in terms of how a key holder might add new users, let's go ahead and take a quick look at that. So if a state key holder has new institutional users, they would use this user and org management. If you're an operator, you will not have access to that screen, and you can add and manage users. You'll see that currently there are 2 users who are associated with this account. I have 1 operator, and then I have myself. So if I have a new person, I would insert a new user and operator. I would designate that person a password, and then most likely encourage them to change it. I would assign that person to a institution or a state agency. In this case, I'm going to use the state agency. And then you just make sure that you fill in all of their information. Add any notes that are relevant. This is a good place if you have had any, if you want to communicate who the previous key holder was or anything to CCA, this is a good place to make notes. You can save, oh, sorry, you also need to define what their role is, so this person's going to be an operator, and then save. So it's relatively straightforward to add a new user. And the process is very similar for adding a new organization. So you would go to insert a new organization. We ask that if you are adding a new institution, that you use their IPEDS unit ID as the org ID. If you have a special case and you need an org ID, we want you to work with us to define what that org ID should be, just so that we can make sure that our system has a standard naming convention for our orgs. So in this case, I don't necessarily have a unit ID. I'll do All-American Institution 2, and it's going to be an institution. I associate it with the appropriate state agency, so in this case it's All-American Test State Agency. I am located in Colorado, so I'll list that. Under class is where you should define how this institution will be reporting the various metrics. So for 2-year institutions, it's relatively straightforward. For 4-year institutions, unless they are considered a 4-year institution, very high activity research university, then they should be 4-year other. Again, this is a great place to put notes if universities have consolidated, or if for some reason you have decided to reclassify the way that you're going to report an institution, which you would check with us and communicate to us, but you would also want to make a note here. so that it is saved in the system so that as people come in and out, we all have the same information. So that's what it looks like to add and manage users and organizations. Next, let's go ahead and look at uploading files. So if you are choosing to upload a file using the flat file specifications, let me just open this document and give you a quick look at what those flat files look like. So we have identified each cell in the Excel workbooks and each piece of data using 5 different dimensions. We use the year, we use the type of institution, we use the enrollment intensity of the student, we use the actual measure, the thing that it's measuring, and then we use the demographic category. And all of those things make up the variable name, and you can see those names in the table of variable names. Then the next thing that would go in your flat file format is the value that you want to submit that's related to that variable name. And then finally, you would use the IPED unit ID or org ID for that piece of data that goes in the 3rd column. So this is what the formats look like. We do also allow you to submit a 2-column format. Almost no one does this anymore. But in that case, instead of having a 3rd column that has the unit ID, you actually select that unit ID when you upload the file. So I happen to have one of these files. I'll go ahead and open it. Okay, so this is what my file looks like. It's a CSV file, but I opened it in Excel. Now I'll go back to the upload screen, file upload, and I'm going to select that file and upload it into the system. And that file uploaded very quickly, but you can see the status bar that I talked about earlier, and then it shows you which steps. So it's very helpful for you if you're having trouble with your upload. Check to see which step it's stopping on, because if you can communicate that to us, then we can help you work through what challenges the system might be having with your upload file. The next thing that's very important to do is to review your error summary, because just because a file uploaded successfully does not mean that everything uploaded into the system. Our validation checks may have found that it wasn't valid data, or more likely that you didn't have permission to upload that data. And if that's the case, then this error summary is what will communicate that to you. So always check your error summary. And if you have a problem, call CCA or call us at the CCA customer service line while you have your error summary up, so that we can help walk you through what's going on, and also potentially view the same error summary that you're viewing. So you'll see I have there's a number of different types of errors in your error summary, and we've tried to provide some text around what those errors mean. Probably this top section of errors is what you really want to look at after you've just submitted data, because these errors indicate data that did not get imported into the CCA data set. So this means that for some reason that those pieces of data were not imported. You're not going to see them anywhere in the system. And then you can click on the error description to find out what happened. In this particular case, what happened is I tried to upload some data that had already been approved. So because there is data in the system that is already approved for this particular metric, context 1, none of the pieces of data that I submitted for that metric were uploaded into the system. If I want to upload the data that I just uploaded into the system, I actually need to go into the approval screen, or I need to, if I'm an operator, I need to have the key holder go into the approval screen. I need to have them unapprove the data, and then the next time I upload, this will work, and these pieces of data will overwrite the pieces of data that were previously approved. So then I go back to my error summary. Other things that could cause data to not be imported is if you don't have permission to upload for that institution, or if there is some issue with the data format. Like, for instance, if you've submitted words instead of numbers, which we've had happen, or if your data file wasn't submitted properly, wasn't formatted properly, you might see an error in this section. The next kind of errors, and actually, there we go. The next kind of errors are data that was submitted and imported, but it generated some kind of error. So these errors are all going to need to be corrected before you can approve your data. Next, you'll see warnings. And warnings are things that we want you to check out, but you can still approve your data even if you have a warning in the system. And then finally, this bottom group, these are data suppression notices. And what our system does is it does accept values that are less than 10, but if you approve data, then we will suppress that data, which means that we will insert a data suppressed. It will still live in our system, but it will never be used in reports if it's less than 10. And part of the reason we keep it is if we want to do some aggregate reports in the future that look at sector-specific information, that allows us to aggregate the data and come up with more precise values. But we also understand that different states have different comfort levels with when data should be suppressed, and we encourage you to follow what your state's comfort level is. So that kind of provides an overview of what the import screen looks like, or the error summary looks like. Next, I want to look at the approval status, because this is the screen where you see what has happened to your data once it's been imported by metric. And you can actually get to that two ways. You can get to it here, or you can also get to it via your main menu. So I'll do here. And you'll see, again, I can see my errors, warnings, and notices. I can see what they're associated with. I can view my metric screens. So I'm viewing the data that I just imported. And in this case, actually, this was data that was already approved. I'll go back to my approval status and look at. So this was data that I recently imported. And actually, you can see there's a lot of information on the screen. So there's the last upload date, the last time it was viewed. So if you're a key holder, you can see if your operators are viewing their data. These look like actually the files that I just uploaded because they have my April 2nd date on it. And you can see that my errors are also, you can also view my errors on this screen. They're marked in different colors. So in red, you have my errors. In yellow, you have warnings. And then I don't see any suppression notices on this particular screen, but suppression notices are in light blue. One feature that I mentioned earlier that we have added is we have added an approval status for all organizations for those state level key holders. And so what this screen allows you to do is it will allow you to see all organizations that you have access to and that you are a key holder for in a line here. You can see how many metrics that organization submitted, so you can keep track of their status. And then you can track when they most recently submitted the information, how many errors they still have, whether or not data has been approved, and then this is where you would perform a bulk approval. So you would use this button to approve, but be careful because if you make a mistake, you still have to go through and and undo all those approvals. We also added a function this year that lets you reset data. Use this function very sparingly because if you reset data, it means that all the data within that section is going to be zeroed out. And data can only be reset if it has not yet been approved. So that kind of gives you an overview of what the upload process is and some of the screens that you might use. Another screen that might be beneficial is to look at the upload history. And the upload history will allow you to view what information has been uploaded within a certain range. So I can see all of the uploads that have been done and who has done those uploads. One other thing I want to look at is I just want to take a look as well at the metric or at the Excel template, because I know that a number of you still use the Excel template to submit data. So we'll take a quick look at that and then answer any questions. So as I said before, the Excel template provides a tool for you to create a flat file. So this is what the Excel template looks like. You will need to make sure that your macros are enabled, and the user guide does have a good tutorial on how to enable your macros. We have built in two functions in here. First, you want to make sure that you can check your connection and make sure that you are actually connected to the online. We found that a lot of people couldn't use their this system because they didn't have an active internet connection. So this just double checks to make sure you do have one. The other thing that you want to do is you want to check the version. We do occasionally have to update this tool, and so we use this button to allow you to check to make sure that you have the most recent version of the metrics, of the data preparation workbook. And then you'll see each of these tabs has a place where you can input data. And then once you input data into these tabs, that's what you can use this menu to produce a flat file that you would then upload. So in this case, if I want to produce some data, I would insert my values, and then I would use my menu, which will pop up this box, and I will put in my username. And my password, and then which institution I am submitting for, so my All-American institution. And from these two buttons, I have two options. I can create a batch file from the entire workbook, which will create a batch file for everything in the workbook, or I can just create it from this worksheet. Now, since I've only produced data in this worksheet, it makes sense to do that, so I'm going to do that. It double checks to make sure that I do in fact want to create my flat file, my CSV file. So I say yes, and then I name it. So American All-American Institution, context 1, and then I might want to also have a date. So it's 0402. Can save it. Okay. Now it's going to remind me that my file has not been sent to the system. I actually need to go into the system and use the process to upload that file. So I can hit OK, and then I can go back to the website, close out of this, go to my file upload. I can choose that file, and I can upload it into the system and view my error summary. One final thing I want to show is you can also use this as a mechanism for retrieving data. So if I want to retrieve data into the Excel workbook, I would put in my information. This time I'm going to take it for All-American Test State Agency. I can retrieve, once again, I can do it just for the sheet, or I can do it for the entire workbook. In this case, I'll do it for the entire workbook. I hit that button. Now it's going to overwrite any data that I have in my workbook. And I say yes. And then this takes a while because it's going out and it's talking to the database. And it's going to go get the newest data from the database, and it will populate it into my Excel workbook. So that provides kind of an overview of how the system works. We'll cut, like I said, it'll take us, oh, there we go. And you see that it went and it pulled these values from the system and inserted it into the Excel workbook. So I realize this is a lot of information. I want to remind everybody that we are here to answer questions. So don't hesitate to call us at any point in time. This next slide has all of the information. Sorry, we didn't get John's name added to this slide quite yet, but he is certainly part of this team. But this has all the information for how to contact us at CCA Customer Support. Now, I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A box, but if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And if looks like we've got one question on progress metric 4. And I'm going to go ahead and follow up with that person individually because I think it's a pretty specific question. I want to make sure that I get it fully answered and review the information. We did have a question about late submissions a little bit earlier. So the thing in the past, our major priority is getting all of the data, but we have had some states whose submission has gone very, very late in the past. And we've been able to be flexible on that in prior years because of when CCA scheduled their convening. We don't know when CCA will schedule their convening next year. So the earlier that you get the data in, the earlier we can start to use the data and start to produce more. The other thing that I think you're going to see in the most current year is that CCA is getting more and more interested in using this data for various different purposes. And so as they start to use the data sooner and sooner, not reporting your data earlier means that you won't be included in those kinds of reports, which doesn't always bode well with the governor's office, who's oftentimes part of the group. So those are the things that you want to consider when you're thinking about getting your data in. We're happy to continue to work with you, but we are expecting this year that the data will need to be in much closer to the completion date than it has been in previous years, just because of the pace at which CCA is working now. And we hope that we've made it easier to submit data. To get the Excel workbook, we have a question about how to get that. And all you need to do is go to the home page and open it up. It's the data preparation workbook, and it's right there. We have a question about, I haven't heard any discussion on further defining who should be included or excluded in total credits and time to degree. We've really tried to clarify this in the technical guide. If somebody stopped out for 5 years, then they should not necessarily be included in those credits or time to degree. But if they have started 10 years ago and they haven't stopped out for an extended period of time, they've only stopped out for a semester or so, then we would expect you to include them in total time to degree. So it really depends on the circumstance. That said, we also want you to use your best judgment. If you have one person that is completely skewing data and you have a small n, then it might not be appropriate to submit a piece of data in that case. So use your best judgment, but also review the technical guide. And if somebody has stopped out for more than 5 years, then they should not be included in those time and credit to degree counts. Well, it's almost exactly 2 o'clock, so thanks to everybody for joining us today. Again, this was a lot of information. I know for new users it might have been too much information, so please don't hesitate to call us anytime. We're happy to walk you through this process and help make things as easy as possible. And thank you so much for joining us.